The strength of young men is like fire, in that if you ignore it and you let it run free, then it becomes a wildfire. It's uncontrollable. But if you admire it, if you respect it, if you harness it, then it becomes a campfire. It becomes a fire within a camp, warming up everyone and creating the container and the space for people to be together, be in relationship. It's like the masculine really sets the stage for anything else to happen. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here, and today let's get back into it. Masculine and Feminine Principles, Part 2. In the prior episode, I left off talking about how, masculinity and femininity, yin and yang, yang and yin, these principles really precede us as humans. They are universal principles and they're alive and well in so many of the things around us and in our world. And when things are functioning in a correct and rightful way, you see the harmony there. And so when when that harmony is severed, we have a lot of dysfunction. And so really want to get into the fact that based on those principles, we then get to understand why our psyches and our patterns and our instincts as men and women are very much related to these corresponding principles. And when we understand the depth of that, then things make sense. And when we just try to take the surface level approach, right? And we try to interchange things and we try to, mix up men and women, everyone can do anything. We lose the depth and we actually lose these really, really beautiful foundational principles that give life to our world and to things around us. And so that's what we feel right now. And I feel that so deeply. A lot of us, just so many people in culture are like, God, something's missing. There's something really foundationally missing. And I have a really great example from dance, actually, ballroom dance and Latin dance. You can see so perfectly in action. You can actually see masculine and feminine harmony playing out in action when these dances are taking place and when the masculine, the lead, and the feminine, the follow, is really in flow and acting based on the principles that they correspond with, right? And you can also see what happens when they're not in flow, when things aren't working. It's very tense, it's very uncomfortable, and it effectively puts one person out of a job or both people out of a job. And so just kind of to set some foundations around these principles. So when we think about masculine, I think about always Apollo. If you're gonna, have some myth related to this, which I think there always is, Apollo would be the masculine principle, right? He's the god of the sun, of logic, of music, right? There's this like lightness, and I always talk about masculinity as this light switch, right? It's like, oh, that's what it is. That's what everything is looking like. This is how things work, right? You think about the sun, you think about fire, right? If you think about the way masculinity is harnessed, it's such a life force. So there's a great example actually in one of the books that I've been reading, but there's this line I remember there that's like, the strength of young men is like fire, in that if you ignore it and you let it free, you let it run free, then it becomes a wildfire, right? It's uncontrollable. But if you admire it, if you respect it, if you harness it, then it becomes a campfire, right? It becomes a fire within a camp, warming up everyone and creating the container and the space for people to be together, be in relationship, right? It's like the masculine really sets the stage for anything else to happen. And there's such a big misconception that like femininity, like can thrive without masculinity. I don't believe it can. I believe it can only thrive within a really clearly set up masculine structure. Same is true in life. Think about the campfire example. Think about dance, right? There is no spin. There is no beautiful woman turning and spinning without the man. doesn't exist, right? And we forget that. So we think about the masculine principle, it's order, it's logic, it's decision making, it's what we can see and feel. It's the conscious and it's the tangible. What is here? What can we touch? What is, how many, when, where, how? Let's do it. Let's explain this. Let's make sure that this is clear. And it's um foundational principle, right? In our world. We need this. This world does not exist without it, right? And then on the other side, we've got the feminine principle. What is the feminine principle? She is yin, right? She's the moon. There's that beautiful quote from Russell Means. I talked about how, the only creature on earth that was chosen to have her life and death cycles of rebirth is woman, right? She was chosen to have these cycles along with the moon, right beside the moon. There's something to that, right? We think about the earth just in general, the nature that we get to experience, all the beauty that we get to see that we can't quite comprehend, we can't quite explain. Like, how does the sky do that with those colors at that one moment in the day and the sun is coming down and like today it's purple and tomorrow it's blue and the next day it's, violet. And these are beautiful principles that are just absolutely insanely incredible in this world, right? Just beauty in general. Thinking about feeling, thinking about indecision, right? Like sometimes indecision is important. Sometimes a powerful pause is really important. Waiting, sometimes not knowing the answer, right? Sometimes just living in the question for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks. Thinking about the unconscious, thinking about the other world, the other worlds, right? Thinking about heaven, thinking about connection to the divine, thinking about a dream that you had that you just know makes sense somehow in your life. You can't quite explain it. You don't know exactly how it's going to be important or effective or needed for your life. But for some reason, these abstract visuals that you have because of this dream that you had, and then you started journaling about this, and then suddenly you had this feeling that you needed to go to Madrid, right? I don't know. You had a call to go to Madrid. You had to just go, right? And then you get to Madrid and you don't know why you're going there, but suddenly you're there and you meet this person or you experience something or you sign up to be in a class or you just have something that makes sense and then you find some purpose in why you're there and you wouldn't have known just by the dream and then the call and then, this is the feminine. It's very beautiful, right? Because I think we all just, we love to talk about these things after the fact, right? It's a little bit scary to jump on these things right in the moment, but oh, we love to talk about them after the fact. Oh, I just had a feeling and then I met her. I just had a feeling and then I experienced that. It's very beautiful, profound principle, right? And we think about the intangible. That's part of the feminine too. We think about, tangible, very clear, brings home paycheck. This is the paycheck. This is how much it costs. This is the game here on the table. This is how many pieces of bread we have left, right? The intangible, caring for the elderly, soothing a sick child, right? Maybe the child is soothed for a few moments and then they're sick again a couple of days later, and then you have to do it again, right? The intangibles of connection, the intangibles of that Velcro within a family, within a tribe, within a connection in general, right? So just any of the intangibles, the dreams, right? All of that. And so hopefully that's a nice beginning. And so if you think about the yin and yang within the feminine on the black side, we have that white space for the masculine consciousness, right? Within the masculine, we have that black space for the feminine unconscious. That's that integration, right? And taking that and moving into like, what about men and women? And how do we live out these principles and how do we act out these principles as men and women? And it's important to say that we have a foundational primary like principle living within us. And then we have our secondary principle that we can then integrate. So when it comes to most men, they want to operate in their masculine. They want to. That feels right for them. That's because they care about respect. They want to be useful. They want their character and their abilities and what they bring to the table to be valued. And they want to show this. They want to master something. It's so foundational to the masculine because of that foundational principle of the sun and order and logic and doing and building. I truly believe this is what most men want to live. And when given the opportunity, when nurtured correctly, when given the right mentor, the right group of men around him, he will thrive. He will step into this and he will make these things happen, right? And if we, of course, think about ancients and tribalism and people living in small groups, no one got left out. No one got lost through the cracks. Everyone was together. Everyone knew everyone, and so there was focus placed on each child, of course, to make certain that each child got what they needed. That's the masculine principle. And so with the feminine principle, of course, there is this real desire to be cherished, to be seen and celebrated for her expression, to be deeply intuitive, right? To experience beauty, to create beauty in the world, right? And when we have these things working together, they create the chi that, of course, flows in and out of each other, right? And then the feminine, she can then respect the masculine can cherish the feminine, and we can go in this beautiful circle, right? And so yes, without hedging at all, it's very foundational to understand most men want to be living mostly in their masculine energy, and most women want to be living mostly in their feminine energy instinctually, innately. And most men and women are born this way. This is so important. And I've just done so much research and I've thought about this so much. I've drawn a little graph for us. So I think this is very important. Okay. So if you think about how people are born, just foundational, like what is a woman? What is a man? What is our primary and foundational energy? Think about the masculine side here on the right-hand side of the graph, okay? The feminine side on the left-hand side, and you've got effectively two bell curves. This is men that are born, and the black line is women. You've got two bell curves. And so if you think about, of course, the most masculine man ever exists, right? Over here on the very far edge of this bell curve, okay? 100% masculine, of course that person exists, right? But most men are born right at the top of the bell curve, right? That's right around 70%. If we're going to get mathematical, let's just give it some percentages. It's right around 70% masculine minded, masculine psyche. And you have space for the 30% integration. Think about the yin yang. Think about that feminine spot inside of the masculine side. That's the space for integration. I talk about it all the time. So you've got most men here. But don't forget, there's the other side of the bell curve. Of course, you have the most feminine man ever. That's going to be born all the way on the other side of the bell curve. If you think about that, he's plenty of men that are born on this side are even more feminine than most women, right? Because if you think about the feminine bell curve, on the very opposite side, you've got the most feminine woman ever, right? 100% feminine. But most women are born right at the top. It's right around 70%. Let's give it that 70-30 split. It's just very clear when we do it that way. Most women are born here, but then you've got your most masculine woman ever. She's all the way on the other side of the bell curve, and she's almost more masculine than most men. That makes sense, right? And if you think about this, this is just most of us are up here at the top of the bell curve. I would say most of us, meaning 90 to 95% of us. And then we have people born on at different points of the bell curves, right? And that's fine. That's totally normal. And if you think about your most masculine woman ever, she's probably a lesbian, right? She might not be, and then she would really instinctually have this inner desire to attract a more feminine man if she were straight. But most very masculine women are lesbian, and it's very obvious, and you can tell they come with a lot of masculine energy. They have that, confidence, and they have that kind of desire to open doors and provide, and they have this way of chivalry about them. And when I see women that have that, it's true. They're not acting, right? Because you can tell that they have more of a masculine psyche. And if you think about um, men that are born all the way over on the most feminine side, most of them are gay, which makes so much sense, right? Some of them might not be. And those are the men that would be attracting a highly masculine woman to them, but most of them are gay, and we see that, and that's okay because they have quite an overly developed feminine aspect to their psyche, and that's just totally fine. But most of us are up here. 95% of us are 70% masculine men, 70% feminine women, and we really desire to reflect these principles. When we're living in these principles, we are happy. We are at ease. We are peaceful. There is chi. There is flow. It makes so much sense. Okay. Really great example, actually, with dance. So I actually went to a really beautiful evening last night. There was a salsa event put on by the studio that I go to, and it was a 1950s style era themed party, and it was all about like the 1950s Palladium mambo scene in New York City, which is kind of where salsa first began. And you imagine 1950s outfits, and it was so beautiful. Everyone really went all in on this theme, and people looked phenomenal. People looked wonderful. It was just so beautiful to see everyone dressed up. And right away, the respect factor just shot up in the room. You could feel it. People were more respectful. The way people asked you to dance was so lovely and graceful. There was so much charm and decorum there. It was like, would you like to dance? And then the hand, and then the walking out onto the dance floor. And it was absolutely stunning. It was, yeah, 1950s dreams. And so what we see, what I experienced in that moment was kind of getting to feel what the leads, the men, feel when they are leading and when they are doing a good job and when it's all working and when she's surrendering into their body weight and just fun and flow is being had. I can tell that these men really, really want the the woman to be happy, to be excited, to smile, they just want her to have a good time. That's what a really great lead does, right? He finds that value that in his abilities, in how he dances, how he moves, how he's able to communicate with his body. He's able to provide her with the trust and the clarity to be able to surrender her weight and just have fun and let go. And he's really driving all that. He's creating all of this. Without him, it's impossible, right? And he gets a lot of satisfaction out of that, making her happy. This is foundational in this, in what I experience. Now, when that's not happening, it's very obvious. When the man's not even looking at her, he's just trying to do fancy fun tricks. He doesn't even care if she's having a good time. He's not putting his attention to her. That's a scenario that happens, of course. But I would say that's not an inflow experience. And so what ends up happening is like, just for example, when the extremely masculine women that want to lead, that are mostly lesbian, but they want to lead, I I dance with them, they're giving me the same masculinity. They're giving me that same energy where they care how I feel, they're focused on how I am enjoying it. They really get a lot of pleasure out of making me feel excited and proud to be dancing with them, right? It's very beautiful. Then you also have the collective of women who just want to lead because why should I just be a follow? I want to break with convention. I just want to lead. Those experiences are always awful for me because we get to understand what happens when foundational universal principles are broken. This woman is not foundationally masculine. She does not care about trust, loyalty, surrender. She does not care about making the follow feel happy and seen and connected and flowing. She really doesn't care because deep, deep down, she wants that, right? She wants that. So she's actually not giving the follow what the follow needs. And then the follow is frustrated and resentful because she's not able to enjoy the experience. And then the lead woman, right? This woman can just say, "Oh yeah, I'm a lead now, right? I lead and I do it just as good as any man." But the truth is, that's not true. Even if she's going through the motions, she's not giving that foundational energetic gift that is given when we have that clear masculine and feminine harmony, right? She's just pretending. And so we see that happening in our society in so many ways. I'm sure you guys can see that happening, right? When you ignore the foundational masculine principles that really care about creating safe spaces for women, really care about women being able to be at ease and be able to nurture and just really creating spaces for femininity to thrive on its own, right? All of the beautiful stuff that I talked about in the beginning, then things work super well, right? And men live by these really clear codes that are very much focused on honor and loyalty, and it's all very clear and effective and thorough, and they just know what it means to be in a group of men and how to make things work, and they do things with a masculine approach, right? So then when a woman wants to come over and do the things that the men are doing, she's bringing, well, she's effectively not bringing what she needs to be bringing. Because she doesn't live by those codes. She doesn't have those foundational masculine principles built into her DNA, right? She wasn't born that way. She wasn't born with all that testosterone. She wasn't born with all that singular focus. She wasn't born with that drive towards honor and loyalty and camaraderie and effectiveness, right? So it doesn't work. And then what ends up happening is then when a whole bunch of women are coming over to try to do the masculine thing, we then abandon true femininity and we abandon the magic of what's possible over there, right? On that side of things. And if you think about successful societies in the past, I even think about, you know, just things that I've read about Victorian era, for example, right? A little bit more modern than like, your tribal examples from the far past. You always had like a men's sphere and you always had a feminine sphere, a female sphere. And the men set the foundation, they have the hierarchies, they executed things to make sure society functioned and worked well. And it was just like a well-oiled machine. And once they had all of that in place, then the feminine principles and desires could come to life, right? I was reading about how at a certain point during the Victorian era, you know, there was no such thing as mandatory education. There was no such thing as like help for the poor. There was no such thing as like supporting people that were on the street. Uh, these are feminine principles because why? Because the feminine is really foundational in understanding the importance of intangibles, nurture, caretaking, right? So when you take that individual drive towards nurture and caretaking and you put a group of women together that are not focused on the masculine sphere, right? The masculine sphere has people working on it, right? The men have it. The men have it handled. They know what they're doing. Like they're a well-oiled machine. We can band together as women and we can say, hey, we'd really I think it'd be great to have mandatory education, right? It'd be great to help some of the people over there that are suffering from poverty. We want to help, we want to give, we want to give. And then the women can then say, okay, how do we make this happen? How do we do this? And then that's the feminine thriving within the masculine container. The men have set up the city, the men have set up law and order and commerce and business and all of these things that are necessary for anything to function. And then with that extra time and space, they can then create this space for the feminine to thrive. And then the conversation can be had, hey, we want to do this. Can you help us? Can you give us resources? All of this. And then all of that gets to happen, right? So much of what we see now as like a given, or so much of just what we see now that is effectively run by the government, right? Are things that just women were doing in their own women's sphere, especially like their aristocratic women's groups that were doing all of this volunteer work to do all of these soft things for society. That was the women's sphere, the women's lane. Really important to kind of understand how much more effective that might be in general. And if you think about it now, it's still kind of happening. It's just all confusing and chaotic. It's not like women are working these like insane, difficult jobs that men are working, right? The physical labor, all of that stuff. Women aren't working these jobs. They're working in HR, they're working in marketing, they're working in jobs that have come alive and have come to be thanks to the masculine structures that were already put in place by men, right? And so it's just a really interesting thing to think about. And then I also wonder, like, why did the masculine sphere become so, hyped up right after World War II, right? It was like, oh, we have to do what the men are doing. And I think it's due to advertising. I really think about that. So I spent a lot of time in advertising. I still do marketing work. And I just found some of these ads from like the 40s and 50s. And there's this one Schlitz beer ad that says, like, don't worry, darling. At least you didn't burn the beer. And then there's this other ad for ties that's like, show her it's a man's world. And it's just, it's bad advertising. And it's like, it's trivializing women and it's just making them seem small and inconsequential when they've always been so valuable in so many ways because of the intangibles. And funny enough, I just think men know that, men knew that. This advertising doesn't represent the majority of people and the way that relationships used to go. I honestly think just like today, you see any random ad, I think to myself, like, wow, that's like tyranny of the minority. Like, I don't identify with that. Like, that doesn't seem right to me. It's just advertising that is, it's a narrative. It's a narrative being pushed, right? To kind of push women into the masculine sphere to start working to, grow the GDP for the country, right? For taxpayers, right? So that double the people could start being taxed. So it's just all very interesting. But I think it's important to really just get a sense of feminine principle in life, masculine principle in life, and how important understanding these foundational things are. So, finally, just a couple of great examples I think are really important to, again, remember the foundational principles here. So, here's a great line. So chaos without the masculine is a societal bottleneck, right? You cannot have femininity without the masculine. It doesn't exist. It becomes chaos, right? It's because why? The feminine is all about the meaning of things, right? Who people are, communion, connection, right? It's really important. Creation. There's not really a beginning and an end. There's not really a clear order there. There's not really um, organization there. There's no hierarchy there, right? It can easily and very quickly become chaos. There's no containment for it. And so we it's impossible without the masculine because the masculine is all about implementation, accomplishment, how things function, competition, provision, right? Responsibility, taking responsibility. So, so important. Great line, of course, is order without the feminine is empty tyranny. So, like, you can do this all day, but like, where's the beauty? Where's the creation? Where's the connection? Where's all of that? And that's why these two things fit together so beautifully. They are yin and yang. They are black and white. They go together. And we just have this really silly habit in the West of taking a binary and making one of them good and one of them bad. Like attributing some sort of label to one of them and thereby making the other one bad. And it's just such a flawed, silly, ridiculous concept that just oversimplifies everything. And of course, the ancients never did this. Of course, this is just not how fundamental universal principles work. We have both of equal importance that are completely complementary and different, right? And so, really important to think about that within like a corporate structure if you're thinking about like a teamwork and projects and all of that. So the idea is like, and kind of just piggybacking on what I said before, like when Zuckerberg was talking about how we need more masculine in the corporate structure, this is what he's talking about. He's like, we're too far into who people are and community and creation and the meaning of things, right? We need to be more about responsibility, how things function, accomplishment, just go, go, go. And that makes so much sense. So it's not about men and women, but we know that the feminine thrives in that principle. Women thrive in that principle, and that makes so much sense. But they can't experience that if they don't have respect and admiration for men and the masculine principle and the way the masculine and men thrive, right? And men really find meaning and satisfaction in that principle without the feminine, right? That's why the integration, that's why the yin yang. And it's just so, so beautiful, right? It's like I have these final last examples that I just think are great. I was giving a presentation actually about this at a certain point, so I am pulling these up here. Okay, so the Moscow Metro is a great example. You can effectively take anything in the world that is beautiful. Okay. This is a really fun thing that I love to do. So, because beauty is the intersection of form and function, that is something that is beautiful. Okay. In just in whether it's in the natural world, whether it's man made, you can create a T chart and you can write masculine and feminine. And then down below it, you can list out what are the principles of this thing so I can better understand, right? The value of each. And right. And so, and then by doing so, then we can understand the value of men and the value of women and our harmony together. The Moscow subway. So if you think about the feminine principle, you look around at this gorgeous subway, right? The stained glass, there's statues, there's murals, there's chandeliers. It's just so beautiful. Then on the masculine side, trains, tracks, insane schedules. Like right in Moscow, you never wait for a train for longer than 1 minute. It's an extremely effective, highly functional masculine train system. Okay, beautiful. You can't have one without the other. Like if you didn't have the masculinity, there'd be no point to having this train station, right? Just be a place with murals, but you wouldn't do that. And that's the whole point, right? That's what the whole point of this is. I went to Iguazu Falls a couple years ago in Argentina. Think about waterfall. Initially, right? I'm thinking about this like beautiful, natural waterfall. It's like the biggest in the world. This must be a fully feminine principle, right? It's not though. It's obviously mesmerizing. You have these gorgeous rainbows. It's beautiful. It's calming. It's awesome, awe-inspiring. But why are waterfalls there? Like, why are they created? To purify water, to nourish plants, and to nourish animals, right? It's like yes, the earth is the feminine, and then this waterfall was then created as the masculine principle because it has a function to fulfill, and then it all feeds into then being a beautiful feminine principle. So the way that it all kind of rolls into one. So I just love this topic, and I hope that has been helpful and interesting. And until the next one, if you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things: either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.